Yes, it's a very good question. I think just to take a slight step back, definitely when I started, I came from a media agency background, so and it's a while ago now, but that was where I came from. And certainly 10 years ago when I started in sports marketing, it was very clear that what we would then refer to really as the sponsorship industry, which has evolved now, was behind the advertising industry. So typically trends you saw in advertising and media planning would then trickle down to sports marketing. Whereas now I think because of the power sport has as a platform, and as we see this aggregation of sort of demand from tech and broadcasters, has put sport at the sort of front and centre of disruption and change. And that's actually meant that I think for the first time in our careers, things are happening in sports marketing sometimes ahead of the curve versus traditional advertising. So we're testing channels, we're testing activations, we're matching experiential with social at the same time, which is not really happening in the advertising space. So that's a very long way of answering your question, but I think what's great is that it really is evolving very, very quickly. And sometimes we get a bit lost in the debate and discussion about the future of platforms and are Netflix going to show this program, or is Amazon going to do it, and what does this mean? But the fundamentals are still going to be the same, which is about people want to watch great content, but they're going to watch it in different ways. And I think certainly from a marketing perspective, sports has now become somewhere where we're seeing much more innovation than often in other areas. Well, I mean, I think what's interesting is probably more not doing things for the sake of it, but doing them in a way that's effective. Because one of the jokes I always like to make about whenever you have to do a trends presentation is it's almost impossible not to talk about China, esports, and VR, and they're the holy trinity of trends. Yeah. But VR in particular has been an interesting one because actually working out the role it plays in brand activation has been difficult, and we've seen a lot of sort of just Waterloo Station people waiting for their trains, looking at a headset and not really understanding why. So finding a tangible role for VR, I think, is an interesting one. Standard Chartered, who are one of our clients, I think have used it in the right way, which is to bring the experience. They're an international brand who sponsor Liverpool on the shirt, and a significant part of the reason for that is to connect to their audiences around the world, particularly in sort of Southeast Asia, where there's a massive Liverpool fan base, and Standard Chartered have a massive presence, so it's a very logical fit. But those fans are never going to go to Anfield, so they've used VR in the right way, which is to find it as a platform to transport people to the place they want to be. And the Inside Anfield activation, which they did, is a great example of that. So, filming the content and creating the content on site at Anfield, and then finding ways to create experiential activity in Singapore, in Malaysia, in other markets in Southeast Asia where the VR can live and breathe. And that's a really nice piece. I think, other than that, I mean, to be honest, AR for me is the area where we should be seeing more innovation from a sports perspective. So I think some of the things that IBM have tried at Wimbledon are really good examples of that. But you look at Pokemon Go, it's like the phenomenon 18 months ago, and that was the demonstration of AR at its purest. And if you think about the way a phone is used now and how a smartphone is part of your life at a sports event, that for me is probably the bit that's still not quite been tapped perfectly, and where there's more to do, and it's just an obvious place to focus brand investment. I think yes, but probably depends on what scale is probably the question. So I think to my sort of test and learn point, I think we definitely see in our client base and amongst competitive set brands that our clients look at for inspiration or concern. Definitely interesting things are being pushed at testing different technologies, different types of activation, doing things on social, handing over control to third parties. Like you think about the explosion of publishers. So whether it's Sports Joe or an influencer like True Geordie, who suddenly is becoming someone that brands will start to work with, or everything that any of these publishing guys do, they want control of, they want a license from the brand to do their own thing. And if you speak to particularly influencers, they'll say the best work we do is when the brand says, it's branded content, but let us be the editorial guide for this. And that's a pretty brave decision for a brand to make. But they're being brave with a smaller proportion of their budget. This isn't their above the line campaign. So Definitely, but probably in a considered way. Is the answer.
Brave but cheap.
Brave, well, not cheap. Choose brave but efficient. Is the word. Yeah.
Joel Seymour Hyde, thank you very much.
Thank you.